There's a conversation that most couples have every day about dinner, about the kids, about what needs to happen on Saturday. Small conversations, comfortable conversations, the kind that fill the space between two people without requiring anything difficult. And then there's the other conversation, the one that starts 3 times and never finishes. The one where someone says something that sounds like the beginning of the real thing, and the other person says something that sounds like a response. And somehow by the end of it, nothing has actually been said. The money conversation. Not the bills conversation, not the budget conversation, the real one. What do we have? What are we building? What happens if something goes wrong? What do you actually want? Most couples never have it. Not because they don't care, because it requires something harder than logistics. It requires 2 people to be honest about what they are afraid of. And most people would rather talk about dinner. Tonight, 3 couples. 3 versions of the conversation that didn't happen. 3 problems that were solved, but not the right one. The first one starts on a Sunday evening in March. 6:44 in the evening. They had been married for 8 years. She was making tea. He was at the kitchen table with his laptop. It looked like every other Sunday evening. It was, until it wasn't. Her name was Sadi. She had been promoted 3 months earlier. New role, more responsibility, significantly more money. Her company offered a financial planning benefit, a session with an advisor. She booked it for the following Tuesday. The advisor asked her a question she had never been asked before. What is your household net worth? She said she didn't know exactly. The advisor asked her to estimate. She tried. She knew her number, her accounts, her retirement, her savings. She did not know his number. She had never asked. He had never offered. They had been married for 8 years. They had always kept separate accounts. It worked. She paid her bills. He paid his. They split the shared expenses down the middle. Nobody ever had to ask the other person for anything. It was clean. It was easy. It was efficient. It was so efficient that it had made the question invisible. She called him. He answered on the second ring. His voice sounded normal, like a Sunday evening, like every other Sunday evening. She asked him what was in his retirement account. She remembers the parking lot. It was cold for March. She had left her coat in the office. She sat in the car with the heater running. The advisor's question was still in her head. What is your household net worth? She had said she didn't know. The advisor had not seemed surprised. She said, a lot of couples don't. Sadi had wanted to ask how that was possible. 8 years together, and you don't know? But then she sat in the cold car and thought about it, and she understood exactly how it was possible. Because they had built a system that made the question unnecessary. He was quiet for a moment, and he said he wasn't sure of the exact number. She asked him to guess. He said maybe $40,000. She said she had $180,000. There was a silence on the phone. Not a bad silence, just the specific silence of two people realizing that they had been living parallel lives inside the same house. 8 years, 2 retirement accounts, no conversation about the total. Here's what 8 years of parallel finances actually costs. Her, $180,000 in a target date fund. His, $40,000 in a default account that had never been changed from the initial setting. The default setting was a money market fund, earning approximately 2%. A target date fund over the same period would have grown to approximately $87,000. The gap between $40,000 and $87,000 is $47,000. $47,000. That is the cost of the default setting that nobody reviewed, because nobody ever had a conversation about the total. The system was efficient. The system just wasn't working. She showed him the numbers that evening at the kitchen table with the laptop. Like every other Sunday, except this time they opened both accounts side by side and looked at the total. For the first time, she had been afraid of what they might find. She found $220,000 between the two of them. $220,000 they had built separately, in parallel, without ever seeing it as one number. He moved his retirement account the following week, out of the default, into a fund that reflected how long they had until retirement. The adjustment was small. The conversation was not. She says the parking lot question changed something between them. Not because of the $47,000, because of what asking it required. Two people, 8 years in, finally looking at the same number, at the same time, together. The second conversation happened on a Tuesday evening in February, 8:17 p.m. The babies were asleep. She had been wanting to have it for 3 weeks. She had tried twice before. Both times it had moved sideways. The babies were asleep. The kitchen was quiet. She had been choosing her words for 3 weeks. She picked up the words she had prepared and put them down again, and picked up a smaller version. She said, "The account seems lower than usual." He said, "Yeah, it's been a weird month." She said, "Should we look at it together?" He said, "I'll take care of it." She said, "Okay." That was the first time. The second time, she said the account balance doesn't match what I expected. He said, "I've been dealing with something at work." She said, "Okay." She did not ask what. The conversation moved sideways again. She told herself she was being supportive. He told himself he would fix it before she needed to know. Both of them were solving a problem. She was solving how to ask without damaging the relationship. He was solving how to fix it without admitting what had happened. Both of those are real problems. Neither of them is the actual problem. The actual problem is $17,000, 47 screenshots, 19 months. That is Shelby's story. You already know how it ends. What is worth naming here is the pattern underneath it. Not the gambling, the sideways. Two intelligent people in a marriage, both solving the wrong problem, because the right problem required a conversation that felt too dangerous to have. Here's what the sideways costs. Every month, the real conversation doesn't happen. The gap gets wider. The fix gets harder. The secret gets heavier. The conversation she needed to have was simple. I can see something is wrong. I need you to tell me what it is. I am not asking so I can blame you. I am asking because we are in this together. She didn't say that, and the sideways continued until the Tuesday in March, 2:47 in the afternoon, when the laundry smelled warm and the babies were asleep, and she had 12 minutes. Prompt d'imagine. Close-up of the single cup on the kitchen table. The empty space beside it fully present. The cup is alone. The empty space is not decorative, it is the argument. Cool nightlight. No hands. The third conversation happened over 18 months. It was not one conversation. It was the same conversation, repeated in different rooms, at different times. Always about the house, never about the thing underneath the house. Elizabeth was 54. Her youngest had just left for college. She wanted to downsize. Smaller house, less maintenance, lower mortgage, more freedom. Her husband wanted to stay. The house was paid off. They had built their life in it. He did not want to start over somewhere smaller. They talked about it for 18 months. The square footage, the neighborhood, the market, the timing. Every conversation was about the house. The house was not the problem. Here's what the house conversation was actually about. She was tired. She had spent 28 years managing a household. The scheduling, the maintenance, the invisible labor that kept everything running. She wanted less of it. Not because she didn't love her family, because she was tired, in a way that a smaller house might actually help. He was afraid. The house was the evidence of everything they had built. Leaving it felt like admitting that the chapter was over, that what came next was smaller, that the best part was behind them. Neither of them said any of that. She said, "The maintenance costs are too high." He said, "We've put too much into this house to leave now." She said, "We could free up equity." He said, "The market isn't right." 18 months, the same conversation about the wrong problem. The house is still the same house. They still live in it. The conversation about the house has mostly stopped. The conversation underneath the house has never started. She is tired in a way that a smaller house might help. He is afraid in a way that no house can fix. Neither of those things has been said out loud. She is tired in a specific way. The way that comes from years of being the person who notices everything, who schedules everything, who remembers that the gutters need cleaning, and the car needs servicing, and the dentist appointment needs rescheduling. She has carried it for 28 years without naming it, without asking him to share it, without knowing exactly how to explain that the house is not the house. She knows the house is not the problem. She is still trying to find the words for what is. Here's what the wrong problem costs. It costs the solution. When two people are solving different problems with the same words, the conversation can go on indefinitely without either of them getting what they need. Because they are not actually talking to each other. They are talking at the proxy problem. The house, the account, the budget, the bills. These are real things. They are also not the thing. The thing is almost always one of three questions. Are we okay? Do you see me? Can I trust you with the real version of this? Those questions are harder to ask. They require the answer to be uncertain. They require both people to stop solving the proxy problem and start talking about the actual one. Most couples never get there, not because they don't want to, because the proxy problem is always right there, ready to absorb the conversation, ready to give both people a reason to feel like they talked, without either of them having to say the thing they actually needed to say. Sadi and her husband sat at the kitchen table that Sunday evening. They opened both accounts, side by side, and looked at the total. For the first time, that is what the conversation was always about. Not the money, the together. Shelby knows now what the conversation needed to be. I can see something is wrong. Tell me what it is. Not so I can blame you. Because we are in this together. She practices saying it sometimes. For the next time. For the person she is becoming. Elizabeth is still in the house. Still tired. Still looking for the words. Her husband is still afraid. Still not saying so. They had dinner together last night. They talked about the kids, about what needs to happen on Saturday. Comfortable conversations, the kind that fill the space. And somewhere underneath them, the other conversation. Still waiting. Still unstarted. Still the wrong problem. Standing in for the right one. The hardest financial conversation a couple will ever have is not about the money. It is about whether they can trust each other with the truth. The money was always findable. The willingness to look at it together, that was the thing that kept getting postponed. For a Sunday that felt safer. For a Tuesday when things had settled. For a moment when the answer felt less uncertain. That moment is not coming. The conversation is the moment.